The Nvidia earnings report has dropped, and as you all know, Nvidia is the world's largest company and it's the eye of the storm that defines our lives. That defines not just the 2020s, but probably the entire century. It is the eye of the storm of the AI revolution. And if you invest in any AI stock, from Tesla as the central stock for the AI, the embodied AI story, to Nvidia, of course, Nvidia itself, as the center of the semiconductor story, to any of the Mag 7 that capitalizes on that, to smaller stocks like Palantir and others, everything becomes a function of AI. And Nvidia is so important because people are watching Nvidia to see if the AI story is still intact. You know my take on the whole thing. I said over a year ago that we have entered the phase of the singularity. The singularity is actually a continuum. It's not a point in time. The singularity begins when AI self-improves. That is not a single point in time. It is the point in time where AI starts to eat up a significant share of the feedback loop for self-improvement, and that started last year. That is the point in time where we see absolutely exponential expansion of AI capabilities, and that is exactly what has happened over the last 12 months. It's not just continuing to happen, it is accelerating. I am using, for example, Lovable, one of my favorite vibe coding tools, and just using Lovable for engineering Pioneer Lands, engineering Pioneer Alpha and the Pioneer Bonds has been a crazy experience because I can witness every week the improvements of these tools firsthand. I can ask it to code beautiful conversion websites. I can ask it to code the backends. I can ask it to give me advice for securities compliance. I can have custom legal documents created with the coding app because in the end behind them stand these models. I can do many other things. It gives me marketing advice. It knows everything. And not just that, it improves every single week. Why am I talking about Lovable? It's just one example. I also use Claude a lot and Grok for doing legal documents, for doing all kinds of strategies. And it's absolutely stunning the progress we see. That is actually the first principle I'm looking at to understand if we are on an exponential trajectory or not. And that is ultimately the driver for this AI revolution. And that is the driver for Nvidia revenue. And that also tells us what we have to expect in the future. It is important to determine, are we in an AI bubble? That is why Nvidia earnings are so important. It tells the market if we are in a bubble, if the fears that are surrounding the Mag 7 all the way to Tesla are justified, or if it's all hot air and there is no bubble, this is actually driven by substance. It also tells us what Nvidia sees and what revenue they report, how strong the further build out, the future build out of these data centers actually is. So let's take a look. It just dropped. I'm recording this video after the earnings report has dropped, but before the conference call has started. So on the conference call, we will hear if Jensen says, has a positive outlook. They will comment more on what is to come. That is another tripwire, of course. If they say, we are scared about OpenAI or something, that will be bad, but we know they're not going to do that. I will comment on this in a minute. But first, look at what actually happened here. As I predicted in my tweet, no surprise, the stock is through the roof, now 2.42%. Well, maybe not through the roof, but significantly up after being up 1.44% this day, 2.42%. That's a lot for a $4.5 trillion company, by the way. You can do the math, right? 4 is like 400 billion is 10%, so 200 billion, 5%, so it's up $100 billion just after hours. So we see the market is reacting positively, which is important. I will get to my tweet in a minute. The numbers on face value is data center revenue is up 75% year over year. Let that sink in. The world's largest company, drowning in cash and still growing at 75%. That's nuts, but absolutely expected at the same time. Okay, so data center business climbed 75% to $62 billion. Think about that in the fourth quarter. Earnings per share beat, estimated 1.53, beat at 1.62, very significant beat. Revenue beats with 68 billion versus 66 billion. Absolutely stunning. And company gets over 91% 1% of sales from its data center unit. Not surprising. So gaming, forget it all about it. This is all about the hyperscalers and building out these giant AI manufacturing sites. What does Jensen always say? The AI factories that manufacture, or not manufacture, like that mass produce intelligence, the intelligence that's being bought by Google, by Tesla, by XAI, by Meta, by all these guys, Microsoft, of course. Amazon, not so much. They have their own thing going on. They want to, of course, be independent, but they're also buying Nvidia. And the space AI satellites, by the way, for SpaceX, this will all be Nvidia. Make no mistake. Of course, Tesla is talking about manufacturing their own semiconductors. This will take forever. And for the next 3-4 years, it's all going to be Nvidia. And then slowly Tesla might get to the point where they can have some slice of the market, but Nvidia is a very powerful company. So don't get confused. So Nvidia is in very, very good shape. Why is it important? Why is it important for us? I tweeted today. I posted today on X. My best guess for Nvidia earnings. Everything perfect. Perfect outlook, crazy growth. Okay, I was right. Wall Street, I said this before it came out, obviously. Wall Street is going to complain about something, but understand there is nothing to complain about. Okay? Potentially a little bit of relief from AI bubble concerns, but not much. That is my prediction for tomorrow. Let's see. And I have some indications, by the way, that, the relief is limited. This is mostly emotional, the bubble concerns, and Nvidia can't do much to make them go away for now. They are perfect. They can provide the perfect outlook. The bubble concerns are inherently irrational. Therefore, rational arguments are not going to, do anything about them. But they will fade slowly over the next weeks. Why? Because they're exhausted. You can only be irrationally thinking about a bubble for so long. There was never evidence for the bubble. There is no evidence for the bubble. There's increasing counter evidence against the bubble. So it is extremely predictable that the bubble fears are going away at some point. And I do not think they can maintain the fear cycle any longer. And Nvidia, of course, is a very important piece of the puzzle. Earnings might help to give us a tiny bump and accelerate the bubble fear dissipation. All in all, it's hard to say how this leads to a rally unless the market is already exhausted from its own bubble talk. So basically, what I said here, and I'm sticking to it, I have a slightly bearish outlook on the market reaction because we will be at this absurd situation, completely predictable. Nvidia is killing it. Nvidia outperforms. Nvidia beats expectations. And if I had to make a bet now before the conference call, Nvidia will of course say everything is golden. Because first of all, you have to say it. And second of all, it's absolutely true. The only little risk is OpenAI. Of course, OpenAI is a little shaky, but even they will raise enough money. So that's the only thing that the market could construct if he mentions anything about some OpenAI question. But generally, this call will again be super bullish. Why do I know that? Because I know that AI is exploding all over the place. I know, I just posted today that I have at least 10x my productivity. Because I measured this as team size. I measured it in how many hours of experts am I consuming per day. Before AI, maybe 24 hours, that's my estimate, of paid experts from coding to legal to product to advisory. Maybe 24 hours was my consumption on the whole Pioneer Land situation and my companies. I'm very efficient. Also, these people are all very expensive. Now, I did the math. What is the actual expert hour equivalent I'm using? At a minimum, 200 hours a day. Between Lovable, my AI coding team, my legal AI team, my advisory AI team, and of course my philosophical AI team that I need sometimes for building our Pioneer Lands. So for me personally, I would have to pay 200 hours per day to very expensive experts to do what I do now because of AI. And that accelerates the entire buildup of Pioneer Lands. Right? I mean, you guys know all about the Pioneer Academy. Go to pioneerlands.com. We have amazing things happening. We are launching the Cities app, by the way. Look at this thing. It's so beautiful. We are designing these cities. You can see all the pioneers in Pioneer Land. You can click on your own city here. If you're in Europe, right, you can go to London, for example. Very big pioneer city. Still working out some kinks. And then you see London here. Look at this. And you see everyone in London. And all of this stuff, it's so beautiful. You can go to the Pioneer Academy, ask me any question you want. If you're a citizen, I will respond to every question every week. I will stop talking about Pioneer Lands for a second now. The bottom line is, all these things are proof to me that AI generates massive amounts of value that in the end means there is no limit to the amount of chips from Nvidia we will need as a world. If I can hire 200 hours worth of experts every day for whatever I pay per day. I don't even know. Like maybe, well, with Lovable it's a little expensive, but I pay maybe $50 a day. That's my AI expense. Maybe, yeah, $50, maybe a little bit more. That's crazy. And so would I spend even more to get even more experts? Of course. Yeah, I would spend 10 times that amount. So, and that's just me. What about the other 8 billion humans? What about the other 1 billion mostly productive humans? There's no limit to the demand and there's no limit to the value. So that is why I'm saying we are not in a bubble. All these crazy projections will become true. Our problem as a world, as an economy, as pioneer lands, is not that we have any limitations or any problems with hypergrowth. We won't have any problems getting the economy up to 5%, 6%, 7% real GDP growth. It's absolutely going to happen. Of course, mostly in America. The Europeans do too many stupid things to prevent this, but at some point, some European country will break out and say, you know what, just let's let our citizens just create value, and that country will take over Europe. Also, our job in pioneer lands is to be from Australia to Canada to the United States to Europe to drive that change, right? To overthrow the shackles of stupidity and actually start doing stuff, because now we can. So all of these things are not the problem. That is why this whole thing is definitely not a bubble. That is why you see these Nvidia returns. This is not fantasy. This is like real stuff. You know that Vera Rubin is coming, the next generation of chips. Nvidia will continue to grow like absolute crazy. Am I bullish on the stock? Not as bullish as on, for example, Tesla or Robinhood. I think they have more upside. But will Nvidia keep growing at 60, 70% for a very long time? Of course. And will the stock also grow? Of course, maybe not that much, but revenue will keep growing like crazy. So that is the situation. And the next question is, when will the market recognize that we are not in a bubble? When will the market recognize that we are kind of setting up and being ready to run like very, very strongly? If you look at the NASDAQ and the markets, you see that we are a flit. Here's Nvidia, you see this nice thing. The market has been a little flatlining, as you can see. This is the NASDAQ over the last 6 months. We had this run up, but since October 8th, we are flat. October 8th, we were at 23,000 and now we are at 23,152. So we are flatlining a little bit. Of course, in the long run, I mean, here we had the tariff problem, boom. But February 21st last year, even here, you see the increase. So we are definitely in a pause halt function, even though there's no reason for it. So I think at some point, the market will get to its bullish stance this year. And so this, maybe in Q2, maybe in Q3, maybe the rally will mostly happen in the second half of the year, but it could also easily happen in Q2. That could coincide with a nice little Tesla inflection point if it happens. If they don't screw up, if FSD doesn't get delayed for robotaxi. But in general, I'm very macro bullish on a 6 to 9 to 12 months horizon. Am I concerned that we get into March trouble? Sure, but this is just another of these points, these data points that Nvidia performs like crazy, that makes it just more and more difficult to uphold that bearish stance on the market for all the investors. So what I'm looking at now for tomorrow, I want to see what happens in the earnings call. On a substance level, it's absolutely predictable that Nvidia is going to kill it. It's absolutely predictable that they are going to have an amazing growth outlook. All of that is predictable. That's not the interesting part. The interesting part is tomorrow how the market reacts. What I'm looking for is, will they attempt another stupid sell-off like last time? And that's often the case, by the way, in earnings, that the market says, I hate everything, I want to sell off. So I wait until the earnings calls and then sell. And then the earnings calls happen and everything is amazing and they still sell. That's how you know they want to sell. They basically construe whatever you say as negative, even if it's the most positive thing. And that gives you a sense for market sentiment. So tomorrow, I will look out for how will the market react to what is predictably a completely bullish call that will happen in a few hours. And if the market sells off, we know, okay, we are not done yet. They're going to keep being bearish for irrational reasons, and we have to grind through more volatility. Or are they going to say, wow, that was amazing, who could have known? And then actually Nvidia goes up. Then we know maybe they're ready to stop being little babies. that is very important for us. If you're interested in Tesla, of course, which is still the #1 position by far for the Pioneer Alpha portfolio that I'm managing. If you're still bullish on Tesla, we have to understand Tesla is in an air gap situation. I call it a deflating balloon until the inflection point that I think happens in April, maybe in May, most likely, in my opinion. Until then, we have a problem. And that problem means we are deflating. But we are only deflating if the market keeps also stagnating. If the market starts going up, then Tesla goes up too. So that is why it's important to understand the macro situation. The macro situation is mostly a function of the AGI interpretation. The AGI interpretation and stance is a function of Nvidia, or more specifically, the market reaction to Nvidia. That's why this is all very exciting. If you ask me what my bet is, well, #1, my bet is that this earnings call is going to be amazing and very positive, which is good because even if the market is negative, they can't uphold this forever. So this will be pushing the sentiment in the right direction. But what is the actual sentiment? Are we going to go from very bad to bad? Or are we going from bad to neutral or from neutral to good? I think the sentiment is not very bad. I think at this point it's just bad and slightly negative. So what is interesting to see tomorrow, will it stay bad or will it go up to neutral? And once it's up to neutral, it can go positive. Very interesting to see. If Nvidia tomorrow is up 2-3%, that's a good sign. If it's flat, we are not over it. If they sell off, they're just being silly. I wouldn't take this too seriously, but that means they want to grind more. And that means for Tesla, for example, in March, yeah, it's going to be a little annoying what's going to happen. So very interesting to observe. Let's see what happens. This is definitely exciting stuff. And let's see what Nvidia does before we end the video. It hovers around 2.1, up 2.5%, maybe up 3%. So it's all about the earnings call where these guys can let their fantasies and biases run wild. I would estimate we are over the grind. It's not going to drop. They are going to be neutral or up. That is what I guess, but it's a total guess. If it's true, March is going to be interesting, and I'm getting a little less concerned of Tesla dropping below 400, like long-termish in March. Let's see what happens. Let's observe that. Nvidia is a central stock that is worth observing. I hope that was interesting. Watch out tomorrow what happens, and see you tomorrow.